So, good morning everyone. Thank you once again for coming. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you about something. Every person here sitting in the hall this morning is carrying something that nobody else can fully see. Someone may be worrying about money. Someone may be anxious about their career. Someone is wondering whether their marriage is slowly drifting apart. Someone is frightened about growing older. Someone is grieving. Someone is quietly asking themselves, what am I doing with my life? Outwardly, we often look perfectly ordinary. We smile, we chat, we come to the temple, we carry on. But inwardly, many of us are carrying invisible burdens. One of the things that has struck me over the years, traveling and teaching in different countries, is how universal these struggles really are. The details change, but the human heart, which is very little, place to place. A young person wonders whether they're falling behind. Someone in middle age wonders whether they have chosen the right path. An older person wonders whether they still matter. Another one wonders whether they've done enough with the years they've been given. These aren't just psychological questions. They are deeply human questions. The Buddha never turned away from these kinds of suffering. He didn't only teach monks sitting quietly under trees. He taught ordinary people in their ordinary lives. People raising families, earning a living, growing old, losing loved ones, facing uncertainty, and trying to find some stable ground in the middle of it all. This morning, I'd like to explore some of those very ordinary struggles through a series of real-life stories. My hope is that somewhere along the way, you may recognize not only the people in the stories, perhaps a little of yourself as well. Because sometimes the greatest comfort is simply to realize that the burdens we carry are just part of being human, and that there is a path through them. So, let us begin. This is talk number 11 in the series I've been making. Trouble and strife. About Daniel, the hamster wheel. Let me tell you about Daniel. So I met him in 2022 in Perth, Australia. It was after a weekday evening session. Not a huge event, just 20 odd people in a hired community hall above a yoga studio. He waited until most people had left. The polite ones usually do. 26, soft-spoken, iron shirt, that slightly careful way of speaking you see in people who don't want to waste your time. So we ended up walking down to a little cafe on Beaufort Street. Nothing fancy. He ordered black coffee, didn't touch it for the first 5 minutes. And then he said, Bhante, nothing's wrong, but something feels off. That's usually how it starts with coffee shop counselling. He was working in IT support a stable job, regular hours, paid on time. He wasn't in crisis, no debt collectors, no disasters. But then he mentioned his classmates, promotion at a tech firm in Singapore, another friend, now senior consultant in his email signature. Somebody else got engaged, somebody else buying an apartment. He'd laughed when he said it, but it wasn't tight, it was a kind of tight laugh. It's not that I want what they have, he said. It's just, I feel I'm falling behind. And I noticed something interesting. He didn't describe jealousy. He described acceleration, as if everyone else had quietly stepped on one of those moving walkways at the airport and just gone up ahead, and he was still on the carpet, getting left behind. When he went home to Malaysia, back for Chinese New Year, it intensified. Uncles asking polite questions, cousins comparing salaries, aunties calculating timelines, all very friendly, all very normal. But in those rooms, success had a face. A seat at the round table, a certain car parked outside. It wasn't abstract, it was in the relations. Then he moved to Australia. And here's what he said surprised him, that in Malaysia, he told me, it was just people I knew. Here, it's everyone. The scrolling LinkedIn, reading headlines, housing prices, startup founders. There was always someone ahead of him, someone faster, someone scaling something. He said, it's like there's no finish line. It's just more and more runners in the race. And the comparison wasn't loud, it was subtle. Half-second pause if somebody mentioned their job. A slight tightening in his chest when he updated his own profile. So that in Pali, that's mana, measuring yourself. It's kind of like conceit or something, pride. In everyday clothes though, it's not arrogance, it's not superiority, it's just measuring. What shifted for him wasn't dramatic. There wasn't some kind of lightning insight at the cafe table. I didn't give him a clever line. I mostly listened. But a few months later, he wrote to me, I've stopped checking so much. Stopped checking who moves, who upgraded, who announced. He started focusing on what was actually in front of him. He was solving, the project he was building, the gym session he had planned, the dinner he was cooking. Strange thing, he wrote. When I just do the next thing properly, I don't feel behind. That's it. He didn't conquer comparison. He didn't outgrow the ambitions. He just stopped feeding the measuring habit. But when the measuring quietened, something steadier happened to him. Not confidence and not triumph, just enoughness. He felt like he was enough. That's where the heat cooled down. Not because he won, but because he stopped racing and chasing ghosts. By the way, I'll make this available to you on YouTube. Let me tell you about Lee Wen. I first met her in 2019, in Penang actually. It was one of those humid afternoons near Pulau Tikus Market. I'd gone down for a kopi o. I was still drinking coffee then. And she was there with a friend of mine, a cousin I think. She'd just moved back from KL, not long before that. She was 26, working in a small logistics firm, admin, Nothing glamorous, just spreadsheets, invoices, phone calls, the kind of thing. She told me she was the reliable one in the office. If something needs doing, they'd turn to her. Not proudly, she was just factual. We ended up talking for nearly an hour. And then somewhere between the second coffee and the rain starting outside, she said something that stuck with me. Bhante, she said, I'm doing everything right. Why does life still feel stressful and tight? She was renting a small apartment, and the 4th floor, no lift. The landlord had just increased the rent. Electricity bill higher than expected. Her car insurance renewal came in that week. Nothing outrageous, just steady. She told me, I thought if I worked hard, I would feel secure by now. That word secure, I remember her really being about that, security. And then she said something even more interesting. When my bank balance drops, I feel smaller. And that was her phrase, smaller. If there was less money in the account, she didn't just worry about paying rent. She questioned her self-worth, herself. Maybe I'm not progressing. Maybe I'm behind. Maybe I should be earning more by now. She once said, if I earn more, I'll feel more stable. But what she meant was, if I earn more, I'll feel more solid as a person. Now, she grew up in a fairly typical Malaysian Chinese family in Butterworth. Father ran a hardware shop. Mother did the accounts. From young, she'd been told, gently, not harshly, you must be steady, steady job, steady income. Don't take silly risks. She told me about her aunties at Chinese New Year. The questions weren't, are you happy? They were, work stable or not? Can save or not? Got bonus or not? Even if you weren't earning much, what mattered was, could the family rely on you? Could you contribute something when needed? That's how responsibility was measured. Then she moved to Melbourne, Australia, for a couple of years. And that was when the tone shifted. She said, over there, nobody cares if you help your family. They just care if you stand on your own. Rent was higher, wages were higher, expectations were higher, and she felt it. The pressure wasn't about contributing to parents anymore. It was about surviving independently. Can I afford this suburb? Should I move further out? Why is everyone else buying apartments? She laughed and said, everyone looks so stable on Instagram. But when we talked longer, it wasn't Instagram she was worried about. It was that quiet equation in her mind. More income equals more worth, more value. And that was the part that began to shift. Not suddenly, and not with a big realization. That was the beginning of steadiness for her. I remember the way she said it. Not triumphant, not defeated, just clearer, like someone had finally put down a heavy bag she didn't realize she was carrying. She laughed a little when she said, the numbers are still just numbers. Rent's still rent. Groceries are still ridiculous. But then she added afterwards, as an afterthought, but at least they're not me anymore. That was the shift. Her pay didn't suddenly double. The bills didn't apologize and shrink, but the edge went out of it. She still worked hard. She still cared. She still wanted to build something. But she wasn't grading her existence every time she checked her balance. And I remember walking away from that conversation thinking, that's maturity. It's not giving up. It's just a quieter relationship with the whole thing. It's not indifference. It's because sometimes stability doesn't arrive when the income goes up. Sometimes it arrives when you stop asking money to tell you who you are and what you are. And when that happens, even if the figures stay the same, something inside feels less stressed and crowded. That's a very ordinary kind of freedom, but it's very, very real. Waming. I met Waming in 2021 in Ipoh of all places. I was there for a small weekend program and he came up after the talk. Mid-40s, quiet, well-dressed. Sort of man who looked dependable even before he speaks. We sat outside a kopitiam the next morning. Teh tarik, plastic chairs, ceiling fans that made more noise than breeze. Clang, 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 clang. He said, half smiling, Bhante, you know my marriage. I think I've run out of conversation with my wife. That was how he put it. He'd been married nearly 20 years to 2 teenage children. He managed operations for a medium-sized manufacturing company in Penang. Left home at 7:15 every morning, home around 7:30 at night. From the outside, like nothing was wrong. There's no scandal, no explosions, no crisis. He said, we don't fight. I don't know, maybe that's the problem. He described to me evenings at home, dinner, television on, discussion about school fees, petrol prices, whether the washing machine needed replacing. Then, both of them scrolling on their phones. He said, we talk about the weather more passionately than we talk about us, he said. Then he laughed, but not entirely joking. What I noticed was not anger. It was tiredness. He was just tired. He told me that when irritation came up, he would just let it pass. Not because he thought he was wise, but because he was exhausted. It's easier to say nothing, he said. Less trouble. Over time, he found himself nodding instead of responding, agreeing instead of engaging, staying late at work some evenings, not because he had to, but because the warehouse felt simpler than the dining table. He once said to me, we've become very polite roommates. Now, in the world he grew up in, small town Perak, fairly traditional family, marriage wasn't talked about in terms of happiness. It was talked about in terms of staying, enduring, maintaining. His parents never discussed emotional fulfillment. They discussed responsibility. My father never once asked my mother if she felt heard, he said. They just stayed married. And then he looked at me and said, over here, everyone talks about, communication workshops, stuff like that. He wasn't mocking it. He just felt caught between two frameworks, two worlds. In one world, you endure quietly. In another, you're expected to keep the relationship alive, expressive, emotionally satisfying. Neither felt entirely wrong. Neither felt easy. The heat did rise a bit when he emitted something softer. Sometimes I don't know what I'm supposed to feel, he said. I'm not unhappy. I'm just flat. Kind of just flat. No other word for it. Then, after a pause, I don't want to leave. I just don't know how to stay kind of properly. And that was the honest part. And there wasn't a dramatic kind of turning point in the whole thing. There was no grand confrontation at the kitchen table. What shifted was much smaller than that. He told me later that he decided to do one simple thing, just to stay in the conversation 10 minutes longer, instead of just nodding and agreeing. Ask one real question before retreating. Not retreating on retreat. Sitting at the table without the television on, even if the silence felt awkward, not just watch the golf. He stopped measuring the relationship against how it was supposed to feel. He stopped asking, is this exciting enough? Is this meaningful enough? He started asking, can I remain just present here, even if it's ordinary? Patience entered quietly. Not resignation and giving up and indifference. Just less pressure to fix everything immediately, like you do in the factory. He said to me once, when I stopped trying to make it feel alive, it started breathing again. That was the shift. Not fireworks, not transformations, just steadiness. Sometimes relationships don't need to be improved. Sometimes they just need room. Sometimes staying without any tricks, without constant evaluation as well, is its own quiet form of care. I remember somebody called me relevant instead of reverent one time. Cheryl is also in her 40s. She's 45. She's still competent, still capable. But the world around her has begun to speak in a slightly different way. New voices, new platforms, younger faces arriving with confidence and fluency she does not quite share. The fear does not announce itself very dramatically. It appears as a question left unspoken. Am I still needed? Am I still visible? For some men her age, this fear gathers around work, status, relevance, being replaced by cheaper or faster alternatives. Professional identity wobbles. Recognition becomes harder to secure. For some women, the fear moves socially. Invitations thin. Attention shifts. Visibility fades in small ways that are easy to dismiss, but hard to ignore. In the Malaysian, Asian and Chinese environments that Cheryl knows well, health and decline were rarely discussed openly. One just managed quietly. One did not complain. Worry was private, contained, often unnamed. In Australia, concern is spoken more directly. Preventative care, monitoring, conversations about risk and aging happen earlier, louder, more explicitly. Awareness increases, and with it, anxiety. Cheryl notices how recognition pulls at her, praise steadies her. Being overlooked really unsettles her. She does not condemn this, she just simply begins to notice it. The shift is very subtle. She practices valuing understanding over attention, contribution over acknowledgement. She continues to act well, whether she was noticed or not. The fear does not vanish, but it loosens its grip. Relevance is no longer something to chase. What remains is a quieter confidence, not built on being seen to be active, but knowing what one is doing and why, without anyone looking at you. Mei Lin, fear of being unseen. Mei Lin. Now, Mei Lin is 65. She noticed that fewer people ask her opinion now. Conversations move around her rather than toward her. In shops, in family gatherings, in public spaces. Her presence registers less clearly than once it did. At first, this felt like loss. She had spent decades being really, really useful, organizing, smoothing problems, anticipating what others needed. When that usefulness faded, something else faded with it. Over time, a quieter adjustment took place. Without quite deciding to, Mei Lin stopped competing for attention. She began to measure her days by whether they were lived carefully, carefulness more than being noticed. The need to be seen softened somehow, and a steadier sense of self took its place. Wai Chong is 65 too. Most of the large choices are already made. Work, family, place. The shape of his life no longer feels open in the way it once did. What remains is a gentle but persistent question. Not sharp enough to disturb sleep or anything like that. Not heavy enough to name as a kind of crisis. Simply this: what was it all for? What was it all about? The answers that once satisfied him no longer satisfied him. Achievements feels finished, done that. Explanation feels very thin. The wish for a final accounting begins to fade under its own weight. It's not important. Gradually, the questions loosen. Meaning no longer needs to be gathered or defended like it once was. It simplifies. It moves closer to how each day is met. How is attention held in our body and in our mind? How little needs to be carried around with you. Let meaning simplify. Nothing resolves. Nothing needs to. Meaning becomes smaller and nearer and easier to live with. No longer a conclusion to reach, but a way of standing in what remains of life. Leah, 75 years old, a shrinking world. She no longer goes very far. Her world has contracted to just familiar routes, familiar rooms, familiar faces. What once felt like possibility now feels just like a boundary. At first, this shrinking world felt like deprivation. She was being deprived of those other things. But something unexpected happened alongside it. As the outer range narrowed, attention turned inwards. Memories, reflection, and quiet awareness took up more space in her life. The world did not expand again, but depth replaced the breadth that she'd had before. Life became less about movement and travel and more about presence. What was lost in reaching really far was partly recovered in harmony and in intimacy, being close with life. Thomas, and he's thinking about being a burden. He worries about becoming a burden. He moves carefully now, measuring effort, apologizing more than is necessary. Help, when offered, is accepted reluctantly. Independence has long been part of how he understands dignity. Over time, this stance becomes very tiring, always managing appearances, always trying not to need too much. Gradually, another understanding emerges, that needing others, there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't erase self-worth. Accepting help, accepting interdependence becomes less about failure and more about a sense of participation, that we're interconnected. Interdependence, if it's once resisted, now begins to feel natural, normal, not a loss of dignity, but a shared condition we all have. With that, I'd like to end this talk. So I think we can all relate with many of those stresses and dukkhas from the life at different ages. So thank you very much for your kind attention. For those scholars, here are various parts of this talk that correlate with the suttas, and you'll be able to slow this down and pause it and look on these if you wish to, those who wish to follow up. I know that canon and the suttas and the Pali means a lot to a great many people. So thank you once again for your kind attention. So there's a lot to feel and think about. It might even trigger, things in people's lives there. So this is a great time to have a meditation, having had all of that stirred up and reflective material. So I'd like you to join me in a guided meditation for 20-25 minutes. And then we can have some sharing with your reflections. There's a great treasure of people here who've lived a great deal of experience in life. So make yourself comfortable. I won't be giving you a technique, I'll just be giving you a guided reflection. And then we're going to also lower the lights in a minute and stop them stinging our eyes. This morning, we've listened to many different stories, different ages, different occupations, different worries, different countries, different cultures. And yet perhaps you noticed they were all expressions of the same human heart. So rather than trying to solve every problem this morning, let us simply learn to hold the heart a little more gently. So please find a comfortable posture and allow the spine to become naturally upright. Rest the hands comfortably. Allow the eyes to close. Feel the simple act of sitting, the weight of the body, the points of contact, the feet on the floor or on your other legs. The hands resting quietly, listening. Master Cheng Yen says, listen with your eyes, look with your ears. Love that expression. Nothing to achieve, nothing to fix. For these few minutes, there is nowhere else that you need to be. Now become aware of breathing. No special breathing, not particularly deep breathing, just the natural breath. Breathing in, knowing you are breathing in. Breathing out, knowing that you're breathing out. again and again, just like a baby in a cot, just calm and comfortable, safe, secure. Allow the breath to become your home. Whenever the mind wanders, never mind. Simply come back, patiently and kindly, no criticism. Just another beginning, just another beginning. As the breathing settles, notice the mind beginning to quieten. Like muddy water left undisturbed. Clarity gradually appears without force. Now notice something very ordinary that the mind measures, it compares. It evaluates and it comments, but just watch it doing it. Not because measuring is wrong, simply because it's happening. Perhaps the mind says, I'm doing well. I'm not doing well. My meditation is better today. My meditation was better last week. Even here the measuring mind appears. Just smile gently. See if you can simply notice it without believing it and without fighting it. Just there it is. Remember that guy in the first part, Daniel, the young one who said, nothing's wrong but something feels off. Perhaps you've known that feeling. Everything is functioning. Life is continuing. Something inside, I'm falling behind. I've got to have that something or other, and then I'll catch up. If that feeling has ever visited you, just simply acknowledge it. No need to analyze. Just recognize it. This too is part of being a human. Am I a good enough wife? Am I a good enough partner? Is my car good enough? Gently ask yourself, behind who? Behind what? Compared with whose timetable? Notice that the mind rarely compares us with reality, just with imagination. Just return once more to the breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. Think of Lee Wen. She believed that if only the numbers changed, she would finally feel more secure. You ever done that? If only I earned a little more. If only I lost a little weight. If only people appreciated me. If only. Notice how the mind postpones peace, as though happiness is always waiting just beyond the next achievement. So very gently inquire, what have I been asking to tell me who I am? Money? Success? Certificates? health. Observe quietly, no judgment, just honestly. Imagine placing all those labels down beside you, your occupation, your age, your achievements, your disappointments, your betrayals, your bank balance, your reputation. Just leave them there, just for a few minutes. And without them, what remains? Simply breathing, simply knowing, simply being alive. Remember Waming? Waming was the relationship fatigue. Two people living together, drifting apart. Two lost souls swimming in a fish bowl. Notice the relationships in your own life. Not with blame, not with regret. And simply ask, where could I be a little more present? A little more curious? A little less hurried? Sometimes healing begins with one genuine question, one uninterrupted conversation, one evening without reaching for the phone. Let that possibility rest quietly in the heart. You remember Cheryl, the fear of becoming invisible. Perhaps this fear belongs not only to middle age. Perhaps we all wonder, do I matter? Am I seen? Am I enough? Notice that longing, hold it gently, then ask another question. If nobody gave me attention, could I still quietly do what is wholesome? Could kindness still be worthwhile? Could generosity still matter? Imagine performing one beautiful action that nobody notices. Feel that quiet freedom inside that. What about Mei Lin? She stopped measuring whether she was noticed. She began measuring whether she had lived carefully. As you breathe, consider, what could today have looked like if my only task had been to live carefully? Not perfectly, just carefully. Now think of Thomas, the one who found it difficult to receive help. Notice where pride appears. Notice where fear appears. Notice where independence has caused exhaustion. Can you soften just a little? Can you allow yourself to belong to the human family, where everyone sometimes gives and everyone sometimes receives? Now let all the stories fade. Notice that each one was really pointing towards the same place, not out there, in here. Right in here. The measuring mind, the comparing mind, the anxious mind, the hopeful heart, simply arising and passing. Rest with awareness itself. The breath comes, the breath goes, thoughts arise, thoughts pass. Feelings arise, feelings pass. Successes arise, failures arise. Youth arose, old age arises. Praise arises, blame arises, gain and loss. Everything changes. Awareness arises and simply knows. And even that disappears. May I stop measuring myself against impossible standards. May I become a little kinder towards this heart. May I learn to trust this moment. May I cultivate wisdom instead of comparison. May I find enoughness here and now. Allow those wishes to expand. Think of everyone in this hall, every one of them carrying invisible burdens, every one of them trying also to find happiness, every one of them wanting to feel enough. May we be peaceful. May we be safe. May we be free from all unnecessary comparison. May all people discover their own quiet confidence. And widen still further. Family. Friends. People you find difficult, you've reached the limit with. And people you have never met in every different direction. People in every country. Young, middle-aged, and old, the successful ones, whatever that means. Those who are struggling, whatever that means. The healthy ones and the ill ones. May all beings discover that they do not need to become someone else before they deserve peace. Return once more to the simple rhythm of breathing. Feel the rhythm, just like ocean waves. The whole part of it, moving in and moving out. Our oldest friend. Nothing missing. Nothing extra. Just this breath. This moment and this life. Become aware once again of the body just sitting here, the sounds in the room, the people practicing beside you. Take 3 or however many slow, gentle breaths. Breathing in and breathing out. Again and again. And when you're ready, begin to subtly move your fingers, your toes, very gently open the eyes. Remember that you don't need to try to become a different person. You just simply try carrying a slightly lighter heart. Measure a little less. Notice a little more. Wherever you find yourself on the journey, meet that place with this wisdom and with kindness and patience. May you all be well. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And dedicate the merits to my teacher Bhante Punyaji and the Nayaka, Venerable Dhammaratna, who were my preceptors and teachers, and my mother as well, who recently passed away. Thank you very much. So, let me also, before we jump right in, so I do have a few reflective prompts that might help, because when you're coming out of meditation, you're all still and comfortable. So which of the people in tonight's stories did you recognize in yourself and why? That's maybe one thing that helps you can share. Or have you ever had that feeling that was described of there's nothing actually wrong, but somehow you feel like you're falling behind, like in the early one there? And that, what is that makes you feel that way? Or is there something somewhere in your life where you've been asking success, money, or achievement to tell you who you are, like with one of those stories as well? Okay, there's just a few things, but people might well have already some comments. I can give you some other prompts, but if you'd like to share your feelings, it's quite an unusual Dhamma talk, this type and this style. It's called humanistic. So it's really looking at the people's lives, first of all, rather than looking first of all from the scripture and then giving you dry theory. So, and it's not deep meditation, it's life-based. It's the dukkha that's in everyday life. It starts from that point of view and then looks for ways to change perception, change the way you're looking at things, just a little bit, enough that will lighten the weight, the stress.
Is anyone would like to try?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You know, in Buddhism, what is the better approach to heal a child's depression?
So the question, I'm not sure, the microphone is a bit quiet, but in Buddhism, what is the best way to deal with a child's depression? What age? What age?
He's about 20.
Oh, 20?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not a child. That's I mean, so you're, yeah. I get you now, yeah. I was picturing 3-year-olds who sit in going,
Because his mentality is still remains as a child, because he's ADHD, autism plus depression. He was recently diagnosed.
Can you speak right to the microphone because it's a little bit quiet? But autism, ADHD,
and 2 years ago he was diagnosed with major depression as well, because his mentality is actually still like a child. So I still call him as a child.
All right, so he has a sort of mental age of sort of 8 or 9 or something like that, or something. Is that right? What age would you say he acts like, roughly? You know, just to give me a guideline.
Some people would describe him still like in the primary school stage.
I didn't hear you.
Some people would describe him as still remain as primary stage.
Primary stage.
Which is about 12, 13.
Okay, right.
Actually, you don't mind, he just walked out, he's actually beside me.
Oh, okay. Oh, I saw him, yeah, with the glasses, he was sitting there, right.
He was hospitalized a few times due to attempted suicide as well.
Well, I mean, I can only give some pointers that may help. So one is that if you're mainly focusing on your own coping skills and the support part of it, that's going to help him as well. There's no child that doesn't see their parent. If you're suffering from burnout and stress, then that's something that is under your control somewhat, is that you can become happier yourself. You also will be quite unhappy with this situation, I assume, right?
Actually a little bit confused and a bit lost due to a lot of advices. As the doctor said, that you have to accept that he has this symptom and you mustn't treat him as normal people. But to a lot of people around me, they say that you must treat him as a normal child. So I'm actually very struggled when I try to treat him as a normal child. And then a lot of people say, like the doctor said, that you're adding a lot of pressure to a special child. But when I don't treat him as a normal child, a lot of people say that you are losing the chance, you don't build his confidence. So I'm actually quite lost. I try a lot of approach, read a lot of books, but very little helps. I don't want to fully rely on medication, which I see a lot of side effects and it's not really helping at all.
I've worked with autistic and brain damaged children for a year in a residential school. I recently heard a monk saying, happy, 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 everyone be happy, all the time happy. This is really, I wouldn't recommend this kind of approach. Firstly, it's to unconditionally see them as they are. So if there is any pressure on him to be something he's not, like to be normal, why aren't you playing with the other children? Why aren't you, that kind of pressure, that needs to be really backed off and just accepted. If he's has a sort of primary stage development, fine. Work with him as a primary age in a 23-year-old body. So suitable, tasks, but also company with similar people. It really helps as well, so he doesn't feel alone and isolated, because that can add to depression and non-acceptance, so as much as possible. And then there are other things that can be lacking in that, like touch. Like if he was, I saw this with there were 75 children, and there was a team of 250 carers. This is in England. So massage, like healthy massage, can be good because they can get enormously stressed and not be getting enough endorphins. Regularly, people are getting endorphins from doing tasks, making connections, doing things all the time. So if you can find ways to make sure he's having enough feel good, and that can somewhat work with the balance. What are his interests? What are his natural interests? And what does he actually do respond to that gives him joy?
Computer gaming.
Yeah.
Fortunately, he has a disorder in computer gaming until he developed irregular bowel syndrome.
You usually find that there's something else. I was just with a very similar boy in Penang. The parents brought him to me. And he was really into his computer game. He could also do a Rubik's Cube in 13 seconds. And I asked him, if you gave me do you think that's normal? He said, yeah. I know other people who can do it faster than that. And I was like, he would sit there and do a Rubik's Cube with one hand. But I asked him like what else he was interested in, apart from the gaming and the Rubik's Cube. And actually, after exploring quite a time, he was very interested in astronomy. And he was very interested in the stars. And I encourage the parents to sort of work with that. You get these projectors that project the universe on the ceiling, or these kind of quiet things that don't require interpersonal skills. If you pressure him into personal skills, that'll be their weak side. So if you can find the other things, gaming can be just a kind of basic to get them something to do. It doesn't demand much. So if you have the non-demanding things, pets are non-demanding. A good pet, like a cat, dogs, or something like this, or petting, but not with the high responsibility level if he's not able to do that, at a 12-year-old. But aquatic fish are also good this. And then encourage him to read things that are introspective or require, that kind of spectrum. Usually people with autistic have something that they can tap into, but not be made to compare and compete with kids who are not on the autistic spectrum. And then you can find that also there are many high achievers on the autistic spectrum.
Yes, I agree.
Composers, musicians, presidents, CEOs. So you can show him that there is a path of progression, that he's not just like an odd ball. So some of those things, but so you need to work with obviously with the danger part of it to get him counselling, professional counselling as well with that.
He resonates very well with animals.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of hate in his heart. He kept thinking that it wasn't because of you, Mom, you've given me as a special child, I won't have to suffer.
You need to really reassure him on all that part of it. Or do something together. Aim to swim with dolphins. Aim to go and see the turtles laying eggs. Something like that. Those kind of things that are positive, goal-oriented, and have, you as a companion, and they are positive things. They're not all like solving the problem, him being a problem based, There's... Go ahead. Yeah.
Another major issue is with his procrastination. For example, everywhere we go, especially in the morning, he won't get up on time. And my friend was saying that whenever he likes to stay home, we don't force him. But I said he won't heal if he's always staying home. So at least you listen to, come together with me to listen to Dhamma talk or whatever. So
I want to show you this. I developed this for schools in the Philippines, but I'm only saying this because you mentioned procrastination. You already mentioned depression. And on this, I'll go quickly to it. I developed this and it was given to a whole class, but some of them had very mild those kind of problems. I'm only showing you it because there is a certain part of this website where there are books for these conditions. So just to show you that they're available. So these kinds of books here, I'll show you them. There is a book on procrastination, and I can give you this link. So these books are workbooks, so they really help the person to focus, even if they are somewhat limited in their functioning. So there's one is, for example, this ADHD workbook for teens. I can pass you the link for this, by the way. Then you'll be able to download it. Like if you click on this, for example, if you just click on it, so I'm just trying to stretch the page so it fills the screen, but there you go, sort of thing. It's a workbook. So they actually don't just read it, they actually do these kinds of things. So they fill in and go through it, and they get comfortable with what, like this, for you to do a list of problems with ADHD, la la la. Okay? So, but there is one on procrastination as well. Then this one, for example, and there's two of these. Mindfulness for teen depression. So these are not, often you get, here we go. They're written by professionals who are trained in education. So that it's not random, it's not like trying to shoehorn Buddhism into this thing to fit the Eightfold Path or something. No, they know what they're talking about. It's researched, qualified people. So those three, for example, depression, what was the other one? Procrastination, ADHD. Hey there, welcome. So I can give you this link to this, just see me later, and I'll be able to pass that on. But that's a whole other way of dealing with those kind of challenges and opportunities, which is what they really are. Okay, so thank you for it, because that really opens up a whole spectrum of things to look at. Thank you very much for asking. Come see me before I leave. I'm going to get whisked away to an exotic location by this gentleman for lunch, which is just over the road. We're gonna go on a zip line down into the India Temple of Fine Arts, I think, next. So, yeah. All right. And please.
Bhante. Hello.
Yeah.
Bhante, just to expand from the question asked of the lady, I have a child also. He's also ADHD, but he's now 8 years old. I don't know whether he will develop into that stage, the current stage, like what the boy, the mother's son's experience. We also have read a lot about ADHD, even checked with AI and all this. And then we found one thing. Actually, the one who's sick is not them. Actually, it's us. Because we have developed such a concrete jungle. And if you look at it historically, you back to the, those days when we are hunter-gatherers, this ADHD child, even autistic child, they are talented. They are the leaders. They are always explore everything in the forest, in the wild, But unfortunately, we, these sick people here, who developed such a big city, concrete jungles, that really like a cage that put us in a cage that we thought we are healthy, we are normal. Actually, we are not normal. They are the more better person. But unfortunately, we put them in a different cage now that we thought they are sick. So I don't know what you think about this. Actually, who are sick now? We are sick or they are sick? Thank you.
When it's pushing the blame around, you highlighted something else, which is the danger of over-diagnosing, trying to put people in categories and say, you've got this, you've got those, you've got that, to categorize people. And then often that becomes somewhat self-reinforcing. Yeah, and there's an opportunity with what we're having, we have been given these enormous tools. AI is one of them, the internet is another one, which could free up a lot of opportunities for camping, hiking, travel, natural life, more time in nature. The previous generations with the Industrial Revolution were really enslaved in very many ways. So we are becoming we have more opportunity than ever, to fly, travel, explore. It's never been as easy in that way. So I think that those natural therapies, just more time with nature, more time with animals, more time making life joyful through that way, that can have a natural beneficial effect. And we shouldn't, as a generation, push our limits onto the previous generations often, or our fears often, especially in the educational field, pushing skill sets that they're just not going to need, and forcing them to crunch their brains when they're not going to need a lot of those tasks in the future, because AI will replace them. There's nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't be afraid of that. That's another problem, is that we're many of the times we're trying to drag the current generation back to the 1960s and 50s and then judge them how well they're doing by that measure. They happened in my schools just the same. We were forced to learn those tables, the tables, logarithms, cosines, tangents. I've never used any of that in my entire life, but it was horrible, all quadratic equations and all these things that can just be done by AI in a finger snap. So we shouldn't overrate the intellect in some ways. But loving care, unconditional care is timeless. Metta, karuna, if you raise your children with the Brahma Viharas and with carefulness, and also what it's mentioning, listening, subtle changes, that's what the Dhamma works with. Not too much like categorize, medicate, therapyize. There's a lot of subtle changes can make a huge amount. Listening to people asking questions. This is a humanistic approach. It's not telling you what you should do. It's like, this is the result of having inquired. What are the problems of Malaysians? What are different ages? And let's start from there. That's a very different approach than a lot of people, including monastics, take. There's a gentleman just about to ask a question. Please. Thank you, by the way.
Morning, Bhante.
Good morning.
Well, speaking of autism and ADHD, of course, there is something, they all do have a special talent, skill set. In fact, I've also been brought up in a very, very protected family. My mom and dad got married in 1963. I'm the oldest born. I have two sisters. 4 years 4 years after marriage, I was born. But I have had a very protected livelihood compared to both my sisters. Yes, I come from a very, very old business where even the Buddhist statues in this temple have been built by my grandfather. But the thing is, I always found I live in a nice house, everything, but life is still mundane. I'm in many associations, but life is still mundane. There's nothing, say, oh, this is a beautiful, it's a way like how the Lord Buddha left the palace and went to look for, what is the truth? Life is still the same. There's so much of commitments, there's so much of stuff. But coming to this boy's special talent, and my mom, she was so, I had to get home by time. She was afraid that I'll be somewhere, perhaps had a bit too much to drink. And that's why I had to be, sometimes you get so anxious if I'm not home by about 11 o'clock or so, because I'm in Rotary, we go for fellowship, and those boys, they drink a lot, and I'm not one of them. I don't crave, but I am with this group. So she gets eternally worried. But my mom is the one, from the age of 6, put us to tennis, put us for music, piano, classical. And all that, and swimming. And my mom, even at this age, when I was doing work, she would say, "Suren, go and play some music or something." And when our piano was not doing too good, went to look for a new piano. And we went to this piano house somewhere in Cheryl, in an autistic boy. We went up the shop, and this boy he was so crazy, he wanted to study defensive driving. He must be about 20, 21, 22. And mom said, "Play a piece on the piano." And I only could play the Maiden's Prayer and the Robin's Return quite well by memory. The person who runs the shop told, get up. I want to get my boy to play, and he's autistic, and he's troubled. He doesn't give you eye face. He looks like a little further away from you. The way he doesn't look direct. And he played classic, like one of the good composers which we know of. And he is Clarence Kong. And you Google him, he's there. And they have, like Einstein, is also Alzheimer's. He's a noted Austrian physicist. I mean, they have some talent, definitely. And of course, in my case, life goes on. So I had not found anything to say, I mean, that's a wonderful life. No, it's not there.
So thank you very much for sharing. There's a wealth of things in there. So sadhu for your relatives for having developed the foundations of the place we're in. And thank you. I think Albert Einstein said if you measure a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will fail. Something like this. It's very important not to just judge people and label them, but to listen to people, ask them to, what they say is to listen very carefully. So when they say that they love piano or they listen to music, that's very important, but those are all skills. So we're very big on judging people by skills, and particularly if they've got like a phenomenal memory set. But even if they have, even if they're a chess genius, doesn't mean that they're going to be happy about that. I was a very talented artist, but I was very unhappy. Even when the more achievement came with it, the less the unhappiness actually came more. That's when I came to Buddhism, because I realized that that's not going to change. Because often, for example, loneliness. If somebody asks me to draw 3 children's books, that's a lot of drawing. You're going to be in your room like someone in prison for 90 days alone, just drawing. That's for me to work with people really made me much more happy, and it didn't have to. Even if you printed my work on the front page of the newspaper, didn't make me happy. So it's very important with people, if they do have unique talents or skill sets, doesn't mean you only go that by putting pressure on that's going to make them happy. It might be something very small. It might be being with the trees. It might be bird watching. It could be anything that you have to find out not only what can they do that's kind of unusual, like the child I told you, he could do a Rubik's Cube in 13 seconds. It didn't make him happy. For him, that wasn't fast enough. You give me a Rubik's Cube for 13 hours, I can't do it. And he thought that was normal, 13 seconds, when I asked him. So that's not where happiness and contentment. So reducing sadness of isolation and depression and feeling different, those are really important things. That's where I think the emphasis to reduce the suffering that's involved, not the too much achievement things. There's a movie called Shine that's about a schizophrenic man who was a genius piano player, but it's also about his misery, the way his father misunderstood him and bullied him because he wasn't strong enough, he wasn't man enough, he wasn't normal enough, and this was what was behind it. He wasn't given the sympathy, the empathy, the compassion, the appropriate treatment. It was totally opposite. Please, thank you so much for introducing some of these issues, though. They'll touch on a lot of people's lives here, I hope. beware of this man, he's extremely intelligent and extremely humble. He knows Sanskrit and everything. Yes, please.
I'd like to sort of take off from Chi Kyong's question, which was basically like, who is normal and what is normal, but from a very specifically Buddhist perspective. So the first noble truth of Buddhism is the truth of suffering, that life is suffering. And of course there in the Buddha's case it was disease, old age and death. But in a sense, I mean, yours are not so dramatic, all these examples you gave, actually also examples of suffering, not in such an extreme way, but from a day-to-day level. And you pinpointed one thing is that in all these cases, what's common is unconsciously you are measuring and comparing. And as you mentioned in your own example, is that even, I mean, these are all people you gave who seem to feel some kind of a lack. But even people who are very successful, billionaires and all, are in a sense also measuring and comparing. I mean, that's what. So in a sense, this is actually life. These are not abnormal people. So my question would be, so one can distinguish two approaches other than your approach, which one is life itself is suffering, you need to do a kind of sadhana, spiritual discipline to, so that's the reason why you even become a monk or renounce, is because you recognize that everything is suffering. On the other hand, the biggest sections in bookstores are self-help books, how to fix all these problems. These are, getting more and more popular, a number of these books. So my question would be, I mean, between these two kinds of approaches, how would you distinguish or characterize your approach, which you call humanistic, which seems to be a kind of a third way of approaching the problem of suffering and happiness?
Let me just qualify what is meant by humanistic Buddhism. It arose at a time in China when the monasteries had become, the only function for them was funerals, weddings, chanting, that wasn't translated, so even the monks didn't often understand the Sanskrit, which was happening there in the Maya. And there were thousands and thousands of monks, and that was the danger, was that it became not relevant. It just didn't help, it didn't solve any of the world's problems. So out of that, two monks, Master Taishu and Master Yin Shun, they developed humanistic Buddhism, which is engaged Buddhism. You go out and meet people and you find out what their suffering is, and then you help them try to solve it, rather than the danger of the religion becoming just an abstract practice that's just rituals and so on, that it just becomes statues, rituals, and meaningless, and just offering money, and that's it. It's not really any actually helping, So that's humanistic Buddhism. So, but the practice is to encourage people to help themselves, to create independence, not dependence on a invisible deity. It is to practice and understand and recognize that we are programmed. We are programmed much as computers are programmed. We can change that. We can work on our behavior. We can adapt it. We can change it. We can develop it. We can cultivate new behaviors. So it's based on understanding that, and then the recommended way of progressing up along that path. So healing and caring and curing is sort of part of that, but then it's also developing the best skill sets that we can. And that can be done in a self-help kind of way, or it can be done in a group, in a sangha, in a community, and with it close to a teacher. They're both suit different temperaments, different people.
Because I noticed that when there was very little talk about fixing their problems. It was like even in the meditation part, it was more like distancing yourself from the problem.
Yeah, the fixing was to see that you can just change the way you're looking at that situation, and that will resolve most of the stress There's the problem, and then there's the problem we're making on top. And this part we can work on. This is the dukkha. A lot of those things you mentioned, that old age, suffering, sickness, and death, that can't be changed. That's going to come. But the way that we deal with it, as we change, as we age, as we grow. Yeah. Okay, I think we're probably running into the end of the time now. So if everyone's happy and content, I hope you've enjoyed this talk and the Q&A. Let's call end. I'll do a brief chanting.
Yes.
Yeah. Imaya Dhammanu Dhamma Patipatiya Buddhang Pujemi Sabada. Imaya Dhammanu Dhamma Patipatiya Dhammang Pujemi Sabada. Imaya Dhammanu Dhamma Patipatiya Sanghang Pujemi Sabada. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Let's put our hands together to say sadhu 3 times to Bhante for his enlightening talk for today. We have learned a lot in the sense that maybe putting less pressure on ourselves to try to fix things up. Maybe that's one point that I get to take away for today. Another thing, everyone, maybe we change our perspective in thinking in order to solve things. So that's all for today. Let's put our hands sadhu once again for today's talk. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you all for coming.